Over the past few months, I've had some great and extremely cool projects on which I've also had the incredible pleasure of testing some great new lenses. Now, I tell you a bit more about each of them and some minor modifications in future episodes, but today I'd like to talk about the most important one in my opinion, because for a lot of filmmakers, this lens, which is the first affordable anamorphic zoom, is a kind of holy grail. But why is it such a huge deal? And in what situations actually zoom lenses are a better choice than prime? Let's check it out. The first thing that comes to mind is of course versatility and huge time savings on set. Another thing is cost effective, because instead of bunch of lenses that cover basic focal length, you only need one or two. The next one of course is all situations when you are shooting in conditions that you can't control and where every second is important. For example, nature films, documentary styles, sport and live events. The last and in my opinion the most important reason is the use of these lenses in all kinds of special shots, sometimes for artistic and sometimes for practical and technical reasons. Now of course this does not mean that all zoom lenses are better at everything. They are built a little differently and have more pieces of glass and mechanisms inside, and that's why they are bigger and heavier, less sharper compared to prime lenses and worse in low light situations. But again, you don't always need a small lightweight super speed lenses. At this point I must emphasize that it always depends on your own preferences or on the specific project you are currently working on. A great example of this would be one of my last crazy projects, where I had only one day and in fact only 10 hours to take all the shots I needed. And what's more, in 3 different locations, including a lot of dynamic car shots. Now, when I started preparing for this project, I knew that I really wanted to shoot it with anamorphic lenses. On the other hand, when I realized how limited my time was, it became clear to me that I had to leave the anamorphic idea behind and build a camera setup with some kind of universal spherical zoom lens. The choice was of course the DZO Tango Zoom, which is by far the best and more versatile zoom lens I have ever worked with. So I decided to put the camera set together with the Tilta Hydra mini arm in such a way that from the first to the last shot I would not change anything except the batteries. Now, everything changed exactly a week before the shooting date, when I got the message that there was a chance to get a nanomorph zoom set for this project. It's hard to describe, but imagine my reaction when I found out that the first affordable anamorphic zoom lens even exists.
Yes! Hell yeah!
The lens arrived exactly one day before the set and I was very excited, but on the other hand I was really worried that I didn't have much time to check it out. But honestly, when I saw the first take straight from the camera, I knew that was the best possible choice. The impressive image circle gives you coverage not only for Super 35 sensors, but in a way also for some full-frame sensors. Constant 1.5 squeeze ratio and T2.9, and what is already a standard in Laowa lenses, you can choose the color of the flare. What's more, you have a bunch of possible mounts to choose from, which makes this lens extremely versatile. As for me, it is a perfect match for my red Komodo X. Now, in terms of length and weight, I was pretty sure it would be bigger and heavier, but it is incredibly compact and lightweight, comparable in size to other lenses in a similar range. What's more, for all those who are afraid of long lenses, I have good news because in my latest projects I put such a set not only on the big Ronin 2, but also on the small Ronin without a problem. Of course, in such a dynamic shooting scenario, the length of the lens definitely makes a difference in terms of a good stabilization, because then the tilt motor definitely has more work to do, but in this case the length to weight ratio of the lens is great. The front filter thread is 77mm, so you can easily put a matte box or various types of filters on it. Both lenses have the same gear distance and very similar weight, so you don't need to rebalance and calibrate the whole thing after replacing the lenses. Now let's leave the technical stuff for a moment and quickly move on to some of the most related questions about anamorphic lenses. Only 45cm is a brilliant result. It is not a macro lens, of course, but as you know, not all anamorphic lenses have a good close focus. For example, the much more expensive and my favorite so far Laowa Proteus and Atlas Orion has about 55cm, and so here for close shots, these 10cm less really make a big difference. Both lenses are of course parafocal, which means that once you have adjusted the focus on the subject, the lens keeps the focus on it when you change the focal length. Of course, if you want to change the mount of the lens, for example, then you will probably have to slightly adjust the distance of the flange from the camera sensor in order to keep the perfect parafocal performance. Here in the kit you get shims, the right tools and precise instructions, so you will do it without much trouble all by yourself. There is another option that is worth mentioning, which is the PL adapter from Tilta, in which you have the ability to correct back focus quickly and easily and without using shims. All you have to do is just turn it to the right direction, depending on whether you want to reduce or expand the flange distance. T2.9 is not the fastest lens in the world, but keep in mind that as a zoom lens is a great result. Now, it is clear that in this case, the low light performance in bokeh will not be as fantastic as in prime lenses. However, it is worth to mention here that because of the fantastic close focus, you can very easily get the creamy bokeh and separate your talent from the background simply by getting closer. As for the shape of the bokeh, this narrow shape has a really clean anamorphic look. You'll notice shifts and transformations at the corners, and of course when you go wide open, you also notice the chromatic aberration, which disappears almost completely at T4. You know, flares are always an extremely individual thing for me. Some people love, others hate, and some people simply like to control them. As I mentioned, you can choose the color of the flares. I chose silver, which seems to me the safest options. And besides, they look insane in this exact project. The interesting thing is that we can also see in a way live flares that change when we move the zoom, which I think looks quite interesting. Here, no surprises. I don't have a direct comparison with the Nanomorph Prime, but from several videos it is clear that the Nanomorph Primes are slightly sharper than the zoom version, but in my opinion this sharpness is almost in perfect balance. I say this because I think that sometimes the subject of lens sharpness is really overrated, and in fact most filmmakers that I know are not a fan of super clinical to sharp lenses. Anyway, I noticed that 28 to 55 is actually sharper at T2.9 than 50 to 100, which seems to be much softer. Distortion is another common thing in most anamorphic lenses, but different people have different feelings about it. Now, some prefer barrel, other pincushion distortion, which is exactly what you will find in these lenses. However, it is so subtle and small that you can easily get out of it in post-production, while if that is your style and personal taste, then you don't need to do anything about it. Another thing that you will notice in any anamorphic lens is focus breathing, something that we absolutely hate in spherical lenses. However, in anamorphics it is, I would say, more like a stylistic feature. Here the breathing will change depending on the focal length, and it is definitely more noticeable at wider range. What can I say? Absolutely unique. I have a feeling that the world has been waiting for this. Now, can it be done better? Probably yes, and I'm sure that now when everybody knows that building an affordable anamorphic lens is possible, some sort of alternative option will be coming soon. But one thing I am sure is that Laowa has really set the bar very high. So in conclusion, I will say this. If I had a very high profile project, let's say a feature film, where I would like to have the highest possible quality and flexibility when it comes to anamorphic lenses, I will choose the Proteus set without question, because so far they are the best anamorphics I have ever had. But if in the same project I would have any dynamic scenes, special shots, car chase or aerial shots, I will take Nanomorph Zooms without a single doubt. Because what I found is that the Proteus and Nanomorph lenses, even despite their different squeeze ratios, can fit together perfectly as a set. Of course, when I look at my own shots, I know exactly where I use a Proteus and where I use Nanomorphs, but when you look at this as a movie sequence or fast and dynamic shots, you have no chance to notice the difference. So yes, I can safely say that these excellent new zoom lenses are a great match and upgrade for anyone who loves the magic of the anamorphic look.